So hello and welcome everyone to our Monday lunch live for the VCCC. Today our session is focused around Cervical Cancer Awareness Week. Just to start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which myself and today's presenters and audience are located. I'd like to pay respect to elders both past and present and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians present online. So before we kick off today's program, there are a few housekeeping notes. Today's event's being recorded and will be available on the VCCC Alliance Open Learning page, where you can also view previous webinars. And if you have any questions for today's presenters, you can do this via the Zoom Q&A function, as you can see on this slide. And we encourage you to submit your questions during the presentations. And we're going to have a Q&A section at the end of our three speakers today. So these are our three speakers today, and I'll just introduce them all briefly, and then we're going to go from one presenter to the other. Firstly, we have Liz Hamm, who's the Health Promotion Manager for the Australian Cervical Cancer Foundation, and Liz oversees their education and support programs throughout Australia. Liz has worked extensively in health education across a number of sectors and is very passionate about women's health. And then secondly, we're going to have speak Laura Philpott. Laura is the Program Coordinator at the Hedland Well Women's Centre based in Port Hedland in WA, and she's originally from the beautiful Scotland but relocated to Australia 4 years ago, and she's been living in Port Hedland for the last 18 months. She's well known to Liz and also very passionate about women's health and wellbeing in her new location. And then last but not least, we have Christine Walters, who's a cervical cancer survivor. She was diagnosed, unfortunately, with cervical cancer in 2014, and then extensive treatment saw her cancer-free by August that year. Unfortunately, the cancer came back in 2015, but with ongoing treatment, she's now been in remission since March of this year. Christine's a passionate advocate for preventative strategies and building support for people impacted by cervical cancer. So thank you everyone very much for joining us today. So now we'll ask Liz to start with her presentation. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Linda. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. It's very exciting to be here and coinciding with Cervical Cancer Awareness Week. This is a time where we're reinforcing the message of prevention through screening and vaccination to increase the awareness of the steps to eliminate cervical cancer. I'm going to talk about the role of the Australian Cervical Cancer Foundation that we play in the quest to eliminate cervical cancer and the support we provide to families impacted by a diagnosis. Our story began in 2007 after Professor Ian Fraser, the co-inventor of the Gardasil vaccine, was concerned the vaccine wouldn't make it to the women that needed it most, those affected by cervical cancer in developing countries. The Australian Cervical Cancer Foundation founders, Mike and Lenore Wiley, were present that night and decided that they could do something about this inequity and with their own funds purchased a number of vaccines. They had some connections in Nepal, and with those connections, the first Nepalese girls were immunised. From there, the Australian Cervical Cancer Foundation was born. In 2021, we're the only dedicated cervical cancer charity in Australia with our responsibility to provide awareness, education and support to the Australian people and beyond. Through our successful programs and services, partnerships and campaigns, we empower women in their communities to take control of their health and wellbeing. Our mission aligns very well with the World Health Organization's Global Elimination Strategy. As you can see from the countries that we work with, we do a lot of services including delivering vaccines, setting up screening clinics, ensuring women receive treatment if required, and importantly, educating those women on why it's important to have these preventive measures in place. As I said, the vaccination began in Nepal in 2008, and that was with 4 girls. And the aim after that was to actually vaccinate 1,000 girls annually. That was quickly surpassed within 7 years when we had 31,000 girls being vaccinated. Since 2009, we've facilitated vaccination programs in Bhutan with 1,000 girls being vaccinated, and 2020 seeing the first round of boys being vaccinated. In Vietnam, 54,000 women have been screened, with over 95% of those who obtained positive results seeking most their needed treatment. According to the World Health Organization, Filipino women die from cervical cancer at 10 times the rate of Australian women. Our partnership with the Cervical Cancer Prevention Network and the Department of Health has seen over 100 local health workers upgrade their skills to deliver cervical screening. When working in any country, we partner with government bodies, departments of health and existing local NGOs to ensure the screening vaccination programs are sustainable in the long term. We've contributed to the training of over 400 doctors and nurses for screening and treatment of cervical abnormalities and cancer. We've vaccinated 177,000 girls and screened 155,000 women. Back here in Australia, we have a number of programs that we focus on. We look at supporting those who have been diagnosed undergoing treatment for cervical abnormalities and cancer, as well as their families. Our awareness and education programs form a large part of our work. We currently present to schools, community groups and workplaces nationwide to increase health literacy and raise awareness of how this disease can be prevented. Our prevention and support program starts with young people. HPV and Me is our secondary school program, which reinforces the health messages surrounding HPV and vaccination. Provided free to all schools, it is facilitated face-to-face and in individual online sessions. Early 2022 will see the release of our online interactive activities for the Year 7 and 8 program, Why I Need the Vaccine, with the aim to extend the reach of the program throughout Australia. Orange Hearts is a bursary program for children up to the age of 18 years who have been impacted by cervical cancer and was established this year. The first round of $500 bursaries is currently being distributed, with this initiative recognising the impact cervical cancer has on children and enabling them to undertake activities they may not have been able to take due to financial constraints. We are very thankful to the support of Hyundai Help for Kids to make our school and bursary programs a reality. Support usually begins with phone inquiries where we can address concerns and then refer on to further resources. Our Faces of Cervical Cancer are a wonderful collection of women who have shared their stories about their cervical cancer journeys. Our Faces of Cervical Cancer support booklet provides comprehensive information regarding cervical cancer and is distributed via the web and also in hard copy. You can register for our free Get the Text SMS reminder service to remind you when to book in for your cervical screening. With about 40% of Australians changing their address every 5 years, this ensures your screenings can occur on time. The Comfort Checklist outlines the simple steps to follow for a comfortable screening experience. There are 2 checklists available, one for those that require screening and one for the health providers. All these resources can be found on our website at ACCF.org.au. Which brings me to Awareness Week. Awareness Week is held in November every year, and obviously we look to raise the awareness regarding cervical cancer. As we know, this cancer can be eliminated, and we're looking for that to be done in Australia by 2028. Our theme is time to catch up. So you're making sure your screening is up to date, making sure HPV vaccinations are up to date. With 2 doses needed for vaccinations in schools, it's really important that if you have the first vaccination, you follow up on that. We're thankful to also all our supporters who have held and are holding events during this week. And if you click onto our website, accf.org.au, it'll tell you about all the things that are happening. We also have a screening of the movie Conquering Cancer on Wednesday evening, which will be followed by a Q&A, and that information is available on the website. Embrace the awkward is also one of our messages, because quite often people with the cervix feel awkward about actually going to have their cervical screenings. So we're saying, please overcome that awkwardness and go and get your screening done. We have future projects either underway or nearing completion. Our Buddy program is a peer support program, one-on-one program for people who are experiencing cervical cancer and matching them with people who have experienced a similar journey. This has especially been organised to support those geographically and socially isolated individuals. Our sexual health program provides an accessible support system for all women with cervical cancer regarding their sexual and pelvic floor health. Our regional work sees us working with women's health nurses at clinics with presentations, informal talks and incentives to increase screening rates in the area. In early 2022, we're going out into Western New South Wales for our Test in the West program that we had to put off because of COVID restraints this year. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are recognised for their inequities in rates, prevention and screening that exist. We want to look to see how we can contribute to decrease these inequities. And today you'll hear from Laura in Port Hedland, who will talk about the wonderful steps she's taking in this area. Other programs we provide, as I said before, are community and workplace presentations. We focus on how and what can be done to eliminate cervical cancer. We're always looking for ways to look with other organisations, so if anyone else out there has got some ideas of how we could work together, we'd love to hear from you. Just to wrap up, here are all our social media links. As I said before, our website is accf.org.au, so you can go on there to find out all the latest information. Thank you very much for listening to me today, and I'm now going to pass over to Laura over in Port Hedland to tell you about the work that she's doing in the cervical cancer space. Thank you.
Laura, you're on mute.
I'm just going to wait to say this is my first time doing a webinar like this, as clearly you can tell from my tech experience, so apologies on that. Thank you, Liz, and thank you so much for inviting me along. It's morning here where I am. I am in beautiful WA in Port Hedland. So I wanted to first of all start with, I'll first share my screen and get my presentation up and running. Okay, there we are. So here today to talk about cervical cancer awareness and prevention. I'm working for an organisation called Hedland Well Women's Centre, which is an absolute beautiful organisation. It's a not-for-profit. We're based in Port Hedland. I'll tell you a little bit more about our town shortly. My role here is the programmes coordinator. I am quite new to the role. The role is focused around health promotions and within the community. What the Well Women's Centre do here within the town is we connect, empower and advocate for all women in a safe space. We've got such a beautiful centre here, and that picture is just one example of our spaces that we have. We like to call it the home away from home. We provide a holistic women-centred approach to health and well-being. We empower women of all ages, gender identities, sexual orientations and backgrounds to make informed life choices and grow with themselves. We separate what we do into kind of two sections, essentially, our services. So what we can offer within the centre. We offer a service that's called a cuppa and a chat. So anyone that wants to come in and just do that, have a chat with one of us, and grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and just find somewhere just to relax in a quiet space. But we also offer a women's health nurse, a dietitian, and also a counsellor, and also we've just added to that a psychiatrist. So all of these services are completely free for all women within the community. Our most utilised service is our counsellors, and we do experience a large amount of mental health issues within the region. The other part of what we do here is our programs, which with my title of program coordinator, I am responsible for. So a lot of the work I do is centered around health promotions, given the first activity I'm doing is the cervical cancer awareness. But what we also do is weekly, monthly, quarterly, various activities depending on what's going on in the town and throughout the year. But on a weekly basis, we run a mum and bubs group, a cooking workshop, and throughout the year we run WOW events. So offering women various opportunities to connect with other women in the community and just really improve their health and well-being. About Port Hedland, when I was speaking to Liz, I realised that a lot of people don't know about this little town where I'm living. As you can hear, I'm not from here. I'm initially from Aberdeen in Scotland. So I've been in Australia now for nearly 5 years, and I relocated to Port Hedland 18 months ago in the prime of COVID in WA. Port Hedland is a regional town. We're quite far away from any major city, and it would take about 16 hours to drive from here to Perth, which is the nearest city. It is very well known for its large resource industry. BHP are one of the largest companies within the town. 65 to 70% of people who live here work for BHP. With that, it does make it a very transient town. So there's a lot of movement. People don't often stay here for long. People don't come and retire in Port Hedland because it's too expensive to live here. So with the mining boom, it was very expensive to live here, and there's been kind of a bit of a downfall, but we're back on the up again, and the cost of accommodation is quite extensive, which limits a lot of factors within the town and does affect our medical system and cause some of the impacts that we are facing in the town due to the lack of medical resources here. So that's a little picture of our port, which is known for a large amount of imports coming in. So lots of red dirt with the iron ore, and we also have salt. So it's nice and warm today. I think we're about 35 degrees here. So yeah, beautiful little town to live in. However, it does lead to some inequities, unfortunately. And those do relate into health and into our cervical screening and cervical cancer rates. So there's two main indications of health inequity in Port Hedland. One is the socioeconomic disadvantage, and the other is the large Aboriginal population that we have here. So to give you a few stats so that you can understand the rates that we're looking at with the diagnosis and the screens. When we look at Port Hedland as a town, the diagnosis rates are 25% above the Australian average. So yeah, quite significant there. And then when we look into the screening rates are, stats are provided based on geographical region. And with that, we fall into the East Pilbara. And with that, we are actually the lowest region out of the whole of Australia, which is broken into 333 regions. And we sit at currently, I think, so this was from 2018, 2019, that we had 31% of the eligible women had been screened. So some rates that we really need to do some work on there. And like I discussed with the regional inequities, what we do face is we do face a large lack of of medical resources. Some of the things, just to help you understand, is the most basic thing of getting a GP appointment. So to get a GP appointment can be difficult. You can wait for up to 3 weeks for just a GP appointment. With that, you will then potentially have a different GP every single time you go to see them, because we are unable to keep GPs here. We're unable to get them here. COVID has added even more challenges to that. So there's a constant turnover with GPs and just a lack of availability to get in. So with that then leads to, women not feeling like they can trust their GP to ask for a cervical screen, or the GP not even posing that question, because when there's so much transition with a GP, they don't get to the point where they don't understand really the woman that they're and the patient that they're sitting with. So they're just some of the challenges that we face. And leading on to that, with some of our females who do and have experienced cervical cancer, they're unable to get chemotherapy treatment up here, and they do have to either fly to Perth or drive 2.5 hours to get chemotherapy treatment. So yeah, so they're just some of it. I could talk for a long time about the lack of medical resources that we do have here, but that's just kind of touching on it so you can understand. With these statistics that have been provided, we were actually identified for a grant to increase these rates. So WA Cervical Cancer Prevention Program provided us a grant this year to to assist with improving the rates because we had been identified as one of the lowest regions with screening. So that's been really great, and we've been very thankful for that because it's allowed us to do a large amount of work, which I'm going to move into talk about now. So I know that this week is Cervical Cancer Awareness Week. However, since beginning my role 3 months ago, a big focus of that has been the Cervical Cancer Awareness Project that I've kicked off. So at the centre, we do offer, like I mentioned, free cervical screening. We have our nurse who is pictured there with myself, the lovely Taryn. She's been in Port Hedland for quite some time, so she's quite well known in the community, and she's a great character. So we offer free cervical screens. We have been able to increase our hours of our nurse. So we were running services every Tuesday. However, we're now offering every second and fourth Monday as well. And with that, we're now including outside of work hour appointments. So on a Monday, you can come until 6:30 p.m. and get screens, as we realized that one of the big barriers for women getting screened was that they couldn't get out of work through the day to get their screens done. So offering those out of hour appointments has been really a big impact for us here. And the cervical screen numbers have gone through the roof. Taryn's in today from 11 and she is booked back to back with appointments. So it's really fantastic to see so many more women coming through the centre. On top of that, we've been out doing some community workshops within the town. So just last week, we were at Rio Tinto. So the bottom right-hand picture there, where we're all in our high-vis PPE, we spoke to a group of around 25 people. There was 7 women, the rest were men. And we had a lovely morning with them, chatting all things cervical cancer screening. And it was a really great, engaging group, and great to have both the men there to support the women in their life. Another part that we've been able to financially to provide is to upskill our nurse. So we've upskilled our nurse so that she is then capable of training other nurses within the community. So not just Port Hedland, we are looking outside of Port Hedland and training some other nurses who are within our regional catchment. And with that, we will obviously be able to offer more nurses, which means more cervical screening available within the community. So we've got 3 other nurses so far that are going to be coming to us and doing some training with Taryn. So that's been a really, really big one for us to be able to get that, because we're just going to be able to make such a big difference to so many women within this region. The beautiful lady that is standing top right, her name is Kat. She has had cervical cancer herself just quite recently. She was diagnosed last year. Another part of the grant money that we've used is to be able to film her story. She really wanted to advocate for women to get cervical screens and to discuss the symptoms and signs, and to let people that, it can happen to everyone. She's in her 30s, she's a mum, and she leads a very healthy lifestyle. And so she wanted just to let people know it can happen to us all. So we've filmed her story, and also some other videos around that, some education with our nurse, and also some videos around the barriers of cervical screening. As we know that it can be quite challenging for some women to come and get their screens for various factors. And we want to just try and eliminate those with the support at the centre. One of the big things that we offer here is if women come in and they do have children with them, that we will help them with the children while they're in at their nurse appointment or their counsellor's appointment, so that having the kids with them is not a barrier. So we want to let people know you're welcome here, come, and we've got evening appointments that's free, as that's another thing that some people don't have the money to pay for it. I was also out at one of the gyms the other week. They had a launch event, so the ladies on the left there were in the gym. The boards that everyone is holding, we've had these designed to increase awareness and throughout the community. And with that, we're going to be running an I've Been Screened hashtag on Instagram. So please follow, and we'll be posting those throughout the week and over the next few months. So yeah, lots has been happening within the centre and within the town. Now that brings us to this week. So Cervical Cancer Awareness Week. We're very excited because tonight is our launch night and we have our girls' night in. So the flyer you see on the right-hand side, we have promoted that event. It's a free event, but we've offered 30 spots due to the limitations of our space in the centre. We have 30 spots and we have 30 booked out. We're fully booked for this evening, so it's really exciting. We have women in the community who are coming along to celebrate and Kat's story and to support each other and just raise the awareness. So we've got some really great activities planned, along with bejazzling some undies. So I'll get some pictures up on our Facebook and socials once we've got them up. So some crafting activities. We're also doing some orange nail painting for cervical cancer awareness. And we're going to be screening all of our videos that we've had filmed recently. So amazingly, Kat has a really positive story to tell now. So we have her story, which is quite moving to share with the ladies this evening, and she's going to be along tonight to let them know where she's at in her journey now, and things are looking really, really great for her, and her scans have come back, and we're really, really optimistic for her. So yeah, she's here to tell her story tonight. We have some beautiful food as well, and we're going to make some beautiful non-alcoholic cocktails. So it's really going to be an evening to celebrate tonight, and yeah, we're super excited for it. Throughout this week, we will be releasing the rest of our videos that we have filmed on our socials, and we'll share them throughout anyone that is interested in any of them. We've got education videos that will be uploaded on our website, and we will also have Kat's story that will be shared. So they'll be shared throughout socials, and throughout the week I will be out in the community. So I've got various pop-up stalls booked in, one of them in our major shopping centre, which is not far from here. We're going to be, myself and some of the team are going to be there for the whole day, spreading awareness, speaking to people, making appointments for their cervical screens if they didn't know about it. But yeah, just really talking to people, and we've realised the power of just speaking to people. It's incredible, especially in such a small town like this. Just through the last kind of couple of months, the work that I've done, how quickly people have become aware of the services we now offer. So yeah, the power of speaking is quite incredible. So yeah, we're going to be in the shopping centre. We're also at another gym in the community. Tomorrow I'm at the gym. So and yeah, the organisations and everyone within the town have been really supportive of these events. At the end of this month, we are going to be attending a workshop that we're setting up at one of our local language centres, Wangamaya. Given that we do have such a high Aboriginal population within the town, we do understand that it is really important to try and get the messaging out to the Aboriginal women, which does face some challenges in itself. So our first step with that is we are going over there. We're going to be running an education session, offering some free food and also a bit of a bingo night for a bit of fun along the way. So yeah, so that will be at the end of this month. And like I said, for us, this is just the beginning with our journey with promoting the cervical screens and raising the awareness. And it's something that we will continue to do, I guess, for as long as I'm here, and hopefully after I finish up here, they'll continue with the videos and the boards that we've made, and continue the messaging to increase the numbers that we see through the centre, and increase the numbers throughout the town of the cervical screens. But yeah, I think that's all from me. Thank you all very much for listening. Next and last but not least, I'm going to hand you over to Christine. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you to Liz as well. I'm so excited to hear all the wonderful things you're all doing to spread the awareness, especially during this week, and it's just amazing. Basically, I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm just going to talk you all through kind of my story as a cancer survivor and cervical cancer survivor, and also talk about some of the inequities that I see and that I think other women could be facing. Basically, I come from Denmark. I came to Australia first in 1994, sorry, and I moved here in 1996. Back in 1998, I was initially diagnosed with changing cells that required a cone biopsy. And I remember at the time, I didn't really understand what was going on. Although I came from a country that had a great health system, no one had ever talked to me about cervical cancer and the importance of being screened from a fairly early age. So really, when I had my first screening was when they found changing cells. So it was a huge shock, and it really affected me quite a bit. But I went through it, and I had the cone biopsy, and I had regular checkups with no recurrence. And basically, it kind of went on the back burner. I still had regular checkups, but I never really thought I would be affected by cancer. I led a healthy lifestyle. You know, I was horse riding a lot. I was exercising a lot. And in 2009, I got married and subsequently tried for 3 years to fall pregnant, and went through a whole barrage of tests, and with that in background that I had cervical cancer, or the beginning stages of it. So they checked me and checked me again and found nothing untoward. And we ended up going through artificial insemination. And after 2 rounds, we fell pregnant with our little girl, Mia, who was born in 2013. And after her birth, I had sort of bleedings on and off, and was asking people, is this normal? And people were saying, yes, it can happen when you've gone through labour. And I said, well, mine ended in a cesarean because they didn't know at the time. I had a big tumour blocking my dilation. But no one still couldn't really tell me if it was normal. So I kind of ignored it. We had a death in the immediate family, so we had a bit to kind of take care of. And in the New Year's of 2014, we went back to Denmark with my husband's 2 boys and Mia, and to sort of introduce them to where I came from and my background, and had the intention of looking into what was going on with me when I came back. And I was booked in for a pap smear, and the night before I hemorrhaged and I lost a lot of blood. And we rushed to the emergency room, and they checked me over and were convinced that I'd had a miscarriage, although I said to them that, no, I haven't been pregnant, I haven't had a miscarriage. But they said, no. And at no stage, although a lot of the symptoms that they kind of work out I had, really in retrospect, they looked like I might have cancer, but no one said that word. They just said, no, you've probably burst a blood vessel, or you've had a miscarriage. So I was told to go and see my own gynecologist. I went and saw him, and he also initially said, oh, this will take 5 minutes. And 45 minutes later, he was talking to me very, very strangely and saying things that led me to believe that something was really wrong. And I left there saying to a friend of mine that I think I have cancer. And yes, he rang me the day after, and because it was so urgent, and talked to me and my husband and said, I've already made you an appointment with a professor in gynecological cancers. And everything was happening really fast. My brain was understanding that I'd just been given a cancer diagnosis, but in my heart, I didn't really fully understand it, because I felt well. I didn't feel like anything was wrong with me. I had the usual tiredness that you have when you have a toddler or a 6-month-old baby at that stage. And, you know, apart from my bleeding, I didn't really feel any different. And I went in there thinking, oh, you know, worst case scenario, I might have to have a hysterectomy and a little bit of radiation and chemotherapy. and was told basically that it was too late to have a hysterectomy because my cancer had already spread to the uterine ligaments and into some really deep lymph nodes in my groin. So there was, apart from some really aggressive chemotherapy and radiation, there was not anything else they could do. And I remember sitting in this waiting room, and I saw women who were obviously going through cancer treatment. I had no hair. And I remember saying to my husband, this is not me. I'm not sick. This must be a huge mistake. And really left there feeling still confused, but at the same time, I was ready to face whatever needed to be faced. You know, this wasn't going to beat me. And I don't think, I still didn't quite understand how serious it was. Professor had basically told me that I was right on the edge of not being able to be saved. So I started more or less immediately. I started weekly chemotherapy and daily radiation. And that was a regime that went on for 6 weeks. And then I had a break, and then about 5 weeks. And then I had brachytherapy, which is where you are brought into hospital, you are put under anaesthetic, and 3 rods are inserted into your uterus and surrounding your cervix. And you then lie in a hospital bed for 3 days, and once an hour, you will have a radioactive isotope going up into those rods and basically giving you internal radiation. At that point, I walked into that treatment feeling still semi-okay. I was worn out after the chemotherapy and radiation, but I walked in and I remember my husband saying, you know, I left my wife there, and it was a broken human being that he picked up, because after 3 days, I was wheeled out in a wheelchair, slumped over. I couldn't stand on my own legs. I couldn't walk. I was ill, and it was a week of just getting back to where I could even look after Mia by myself for half an hour. It was at this stage that Neil sort of said he needed some support more so than friends, but from people who had been through it and people who knew a lot about cervical cancer. And he took contact to the ACCF, the Australian Cervical Cancer Foundation, and they just gave us such an immense amount of support and have been ever since. They took us on outings, you know, to football games, to gala events, and it was just so wonderful to go somewhere that wasn't treatment, that you could stop and be a normal human being for a bit, or even get to dress up a bit and put a bit of makeup on and feel that you were somewhat back to your old normal self. Since then, you know, I've gone to become one of the face cervical cancer, and am so passionate about spreading awareness of cervical cancer, because I still feel it's a bit of a forgotten cancer in the Australian society, that we don't like talking about it because it's, you know, it's not nice. It is not nice to go and get your screening. And that's just a fact. And therefore we don't like talking about it. And it's easy to forget when we don't like talking about something. After the brachytherapy, I decided to go on to the Outback Trial, which was a 3-month chemotherapy stint that was designed to try to mop up any kind of chances of metastases. So any cells that had gotten away from my pelvic area, it was designed to kill. So it was, again, chemotherapy every 3 weeks with a drug called Avastin that was designed to open up my blood vessels so the chemo could get in and kill whatever bad cells were left. Later in August, September of 1994, I was told I was cancer-free, and it was basically a miracle. And 2 months later, I started feeling quite sick again. I was really tired. I was painful in my back, painful in my pelvic area. At the time, my chemo doctor who'd been looking after me had gone on maternity leave, and I was being seen by my radiation oncologist, who basically told me that, you know, the chances of me having any kind of recurrent cancer was basically, like, I think she said I had a 5% chance. And also that she thought I probably had survivorship guilt. And I said, look, I'm physically feeling very unwell. And she said, no, you can't be feeling unwell. So another 3 months passed, and I was sent for a CT scan just as a follow-up, and I came back to see the same doctor, at which point I was informed that now my cervix had become bumpy. And from there, she still said, I think you're just having some scar tissue, nothing's wrong, but we'll send you in for a PET scan. And after my PET scan, I was called in to see the professor again, who told me that unfortunately my cancer had spread to my mediastinal lymph nodes in my chest, and that there was nothing that could be done, nothing that could fix me. And at that time, you know, it's 2015, so my daughter is, you know, 1.5 by then. And I remember saying, look, you just have to give me enough time that she will be old enough that the memories that she will have of me won't just be what she's been told about me. They will be actual memories that she can form with me through experiences. That was my main aim. He then said, look, let's be sure that what we're seeing is the actual reality. And I went under anesthetic, and they had a good look around, and basically I was told that you couldn't even see that I'd had any sort of treatment. It was so aggressive, it had spread everywhere, and I would be lucky if I had more than a year to live. I started chemotherapy again straight away, and I don't know, I've often said that maybe I was in denial, but also I was determined not to let cancer kind of run my life. If I wanted to have a McDonald's meal, I had a McDonald's meal. I said, I can't eat kale 3 times a day. I need to live my life. If this is the only life I have left, this is going to be lived on my terms. I had chemotherapy ongoing till from 2015 to 2016, at which point I was getting quite ill, and I couldn't have any more chemotherapy. My body simply couldn't take any more. I was very lucky at that stage to be offered that I could have immunotherapy. And I started immunotherapy every 3 weeks. This is in 2016. And I had immunotherapy for 9 months, at which point I developed an allergic reaction to it. But my scans were looking really good, and we said, let's have a go at not having any treatment. And that's where we're at today. I haven't had any treatment since 2017, and my scans are still good, and so good that, you know, at the early stage this year, my oncologist said, look, I think I tentatively am happy to say that you are in remission. I don't know if it was a relief. It was certainly a relief to my family. It was a relief to my family in Denmark. Personally, I think you always go, well, I do anyway, I sort of feel like you have cancer sitting on your shoulder, kind of knocking. You become very hyper aware of what's going on with your body, and any little twinge, you worry a bit that it's coming or it is there. So that is still with me, and that's sort of my own mental state that I have to deal with. Thinking about, you know, inequities, and also in terms of what Laura and Liz said, I think some of the, from a cervical cancer sufferer, some of the biggest inequities that we have is where you live. Have you got doctors that are, you know, within driving range, or you can easily access them? How much does your travel cost you? how good is your insurance? Because believe me, that does play into it. If you don't have private health insurance, chances are you'll be waiting for some of these treatments. Where is your cancer? So is it in your ovaries or is it in your cervix? In my mind, that's quite close to each other. But ovaries, it's on the PBS for immunotherapies, but if it's in your cervix, then you have to pay for it yourself. Obviously, they're not that far apart, so I don't quite understand that. But it, for me and for my husband, that equated to $4,500 every 3 weeks. What is your support network? Have you got family, friends, not just for yourself, but also for your family? Was there people willing to take Mia from me? Yes. Were there people willing to take Neil out for a beer once in a while so he could get away and just feel normal again without the pressures of having a sick wife? What is the ongoing care cost? Because once you finish treatment, that's not the end of it. You have constant specialist follow-ups, you have scans, you might be seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a sex therapist or a physio. There is constant, for a better word, maintenance upkeep with your body to stay ahead of cancer. So for me, I was super lucky. I lived in an urban setting, so I had my doctors at a close proximity. I had facilities close by to get to my CT and my PET scans. I had private health, so I didn't have to wait. I saw the same doctor for chemotherapy and another doctor for radiation and one for brachytherapy. But they were my main doctors, and I would see them every time I would go for that particular treatment. So I didn't have to re-explain myself or go through my medication list or my disease, what my disease was and how long I'd had it for. I had a good insurance through my super that gave me the financial ability to pursue the treatment. And one of the most important things for me was that Neil had a job that gave him the time he needed to be with me, to take me to treatment, to just stay with me if I was too weak or too sick to look after Mia. And even with all this luck and being in such a fortunate setting, it has conservatively cost us $250,000 to keep me alive. And looking at some of the things that Laura was talking about before, if I didn't have all these things available to me, there is no doubt in my mind that I would be dead today. And Neil wouldn't have a wife, Mia wouldn't have a mum. And I think that's one of the things that's forgotten, that a lot of people think having cancer in a first world country is free, and it's not. And it shouldn't be that way in my book. It should be that if you need a drug, then that's what you get, regardless of your financial prowess or what your insurance is like. If you need a nurse at home, then that should be available to you. There's so many things that we need to focus on, but I think a lot of people aren't aware of unless they are unfortunate enough to go through a cancer, a disease like I have. And yeah, and that's it for me. So thank you very much for listening, and over to Linda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine, for sharing your quite amazing story. So now we're going to have a bit of a Q&A section. Well, I'll let the others pop back in again. Maybe I'll just quickly ask you a question, Christine. You talked about that fear that the cancer, could come back, and that, it's taken your oncologist 5 years to say you might be in remission. Like, what strategies do you use for kind of dealing with that fear? Because it's a very common problem in our patients. Every time they get a headache or a tummy ache, they think cancer's come back there. But what strategies are helpful for you?
I don't sometimes I would call it denial more than anything, but I think I keep busy. I keep really busy. I have a lot of physical outdoor things. I do a lot of horse riding, and we live on a property. So there's always things to keep you busy. But I find if I keep still and think about what's going on in my body too much, not only you focus on that, your body is not what it was, 7 years ago. It's you've aged like a 90-year-old on the inside. And there's so many things that can affect you, not just physically, but mentally is the big hurdle. And so I think the big thing for me is just to keep busy. And I hate the word think positive, because I think people need to allow themselves to have days when you say, today I really don't feel well. Today I just want to cry because this was such a, excuse my French, a crap blow to be dealt. It's not a good set of cards to have, and you just want to feel upset, but never give up hope, because up until me, none of my doctors had ever seen anyone beat it or go in remission. So I remember my doctor saying, you tell me what you want to do, because I don't have anything in my book about you. So I just think, however bad it looks, never ever give up hope, because I'm that one person that it can happen to, so it can happen to many people, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's been one of the challenges in working in cervical cancer that, it's mostly been a disease of underserved populations and areas of the world that haven't got good health care, not considered something that might respond to immunotherapy. So there wasn't a lot of research up until recently. But now with the early signals that immunotherapy can do something for people like you, there is a lot more trials ongoing. So that's definitely a positive thing. So just changing tack a bit, Liz, you shared with me that there was a media release earlier today about women being able to do self-collection to get their pap smears. Nobody likes going in to do their pap smears. How's all that going to work, and how much difference do you think it will make?
Well, now it's going to allow any person with a cervix to actually go and have self-collection for their screening. And when we still hear about pap smears, but we know now that we do call it cervical screening. So we're hoping that will increase the number of women. We know that 45% of women or people with a cervix don't go and get their screening. So hopefully, because Christine talked about it being awkward, being people worrying about doing those sort of things, that will encourage people to go and do it.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think as women we have to deal with lots of yucky things, don't we? So
we do, yes, yes, it's very important. And I think some people don't even know about screening at all. They've heard of pap smears, but they haven't heard of cervical screening, even though this whole program's been going for 4 years now. Yes, so we still need to get that message out to everybody.
Yeah. And Laura, it seems like you're doing really amazing work. It just sounds fantastic. All of the different ways that you're trying to get the message out there. What do you find is the most sort of impactful for the different age groups or demographics you're trying to target?
Honestly, I think it's a bit of you got to just try all the different methods, because everybody will use a different resource for getting their information. So it might be social media. It might be we do radio once a week, so it might be radio. We use the newspaper, so we use all the resources we have available, because I think every demographic, every age group will use a different resource to get their information. So that's where we're trying to just tackle it from, I guess, all areas and all the different ways that we can, whether it is physically speaking to people face to face, or if it's people who prefer to use Instagram online. And we're trying to use the online Instagram campaign to kind of target the 25 to 40 kind of age group who are more into your Instagram. I know it's more of a way things are going now. So yeah, it's no one way that we've seen has been more powerful than others. I think it's just trying every way you can.
Yeah, very different world in terms of messages, isn't it? And TikTok, you must be doing TikTok. That's all my daughter who's 15 to read.
It's funny you say that, because Kat, our member who has had cervical cancer herself, she started off with her own TikTok page. So that's kind of where all it began, and she's been using that as her platform for sharing her messaging. So yeah, I'm not quite down with the TikTok savvy, but yeah, it's something we might venture into.
There's a few questions come through. One for Christine. Would you encourage women to push for more intensive action at an earlier stage, given your experience?
I definitely think that you don't know what you don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're not aware of what the questions that you need to ask, then how can you ask them? The biggest thing for me is to trust your own body. You know, hindsight, you know, not really of much use to anyone, but I don't know what would have happened if that radiation oncologist had listened to me the first time I came in and said, I feel like something's going on, and didn't placate me and say, look, you're imagining it, you've got survivorship guilt, blah, blah, blah. But in that stage, I should have kept pushing. I shouldn't have just said, no, okay, you're right. Keep pushing, believe in yourself and believe in what your body's trying to tell you, because every time my body has told me something, it has basically turned out to be right. Whether I listen to it or ignore it, that's a different case. But listen to yourself and trust yourself. Just because someone might have a fancy job title doesn't mean they know your body any better than you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Someone also has asked, Laura, how do you think self-screening will be accepted in the community? How much difference will it make?
I think it will be great for our Aboriginal population, because there is a big aspect of shame, and not just with Aboriginal women, with also some of our other culturally diverse communities, and we do have a vast diverse community here. So within some cultures there is, and even, you know, within my own, and there is a vast amount of shame and embarrassment. And, you know, for people who as well, we have quite a few clients who've had trauma, you know, whether it's related to domestic violence or, you know, something that for them, having somebody else do the procedure is a big step, and that's a big barrier for them. So if they can come into the centre and we can, you know, administer the self collection, but they can just go to the bathroom themselves and do it, I think that takes away so many factors for women. They're not going to care if they haven't had their waxing done. They're not, you know, all of these things that women think about before they go for screenings, and they're like, oh well, you know, I haven't had my waxing done, I'm not looking great today. It's not going to matter. So there's so many factors I think it will remove if that is available. And it's something that I've been excited for coming out, and I think that it'll be great for so many people up here that we can offer that to them.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I've definitely also had that experience in the clinic that I work. Some of the women that have come through now, I mean, some of them have done everything. They've had every smear, every screening test that they should have. They've lived perfectly healthy lives and they still get cancer. But definitely there's a population that have had some bad experience in their life or just have terrible lives that have led to them, you know, never having a screen done. So I'm also optimistic that will make a big difference. I'm trying to see if there's some other questions here. Someone wanted to know, Christine, what type of immunotherapy did you have?
I think it's called pembrolizumab. Pembrolizumab. That was the sort of the pembro they call just. Yeah. Normally we just say pembro, but yeah, that's what I had. I believe there's a few others that are coming into in terms of treating cervical cancer as well now, but I don't think any of them are on the PBS as of yet.
Yeah, that's right. So
you know, which is something that I kind of get on my high horse a bit about a lot, because I don't see the big there is obviously a big difference, but there's not a big in terms of centimeters between your ovaries and your cervix. So, you know, for the same drug.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not on the PBS for any gynecological cancer at this point, even though it does even work in some types of endometrial cancer, but it is on the PBS for lots of other types of cancer like melanoma and skin cancer. And I think it's because there hasn't been that many trials yet in cervix cancer, so it is now available, funded in the US, but the number of people who respond to it are not as high as we would like it to be. But hopefully with some of the newer trials and combinations coming through, we will end up definitely with some immunotherapy on the PBS at some stage for cervix cancer, but it is a big gap at the moment. I think we've covered most of the questions. Someone's made a comment about the gap in awareness. Yeah, and I think, doctors are always guilty of not listening to their patients enough. The patients will tell you if there's something wrong with them. Most of the time, if you listen to them, you usually don't go too far wrong. So that's a very important reminder. So I think that brings us to the end of our time. So thank you so much for all our panellists and for contributing to a wonderful session. And let everyone get on with the rest of their day. Thank you.